Hey, so I'm here with Alfredo, who worked on Stars and Bandits for his final project. Tell me what the game is about a little bit.
Well, Stars and Bandit it's a roguelite top-down shooter in space that's physics-based. So each element of the game should modify the player's movement in one way or another. For example, the weapons push back the player back. Some weapons have more pushback than others. Some weapons fire quicker. There's also abilities that also modify the player movement. It can bind their movement. It can make them faster, make them slower. It all depends.
Yeah, I remember when I played it, like the movement felt really, really great, right? And every gun had its own kick that kind of moved your ship around as well. So you had your thrusters, and then you had to kind of compensate for the recoil. What did you guys like? What kind of testing you guys did? What was your design philosophy for getting that movement to feel so good?
Well, the testing was just playing and playing and playing until it felt right. It was a lot of going into the rigid body of the object, modifying its gravity, its drag, and so on and so forth. The philosophy of the game was everything must modify the player's movement in one way or another one. Realism be damned. We want to make the game more fun than realistic. Because realistically, oh, you will explode like after 3 hits, but that would be so boring and so frustrating. So we just decided to make it more fun than anything else.
Awesome. Did the vision change? So like, usually games start with kind of like your core concept or your one idea, and then you massage and evolve that concept into what the final product is, right? So how did your game change from like pre-pro to your early alpha to your final, what you ended up with?
Fortunately for us, we didn't change the game that much from beginning to end. It was like Cyberpunk, which is a totally different game from what I started. The starting idea and the final project are very similar. I think the biggest difference are the amount of weapons. We wanted to add more weapons, but after developing, I think the 8, 10 weapons that is in the game, we said, okay, we keep adding more weapons. We're gonna have to stop working on enemies and other stuff. So we decided to stop adding weapons, stop abilities, and add more polish to the project itself.
Nice. And yeah, like when you say that you add a whole bunch of weapons, like that game has like a crazy amount of for the short development time you guys had, like all the different guns and all different power-ups and even different ships, right? How did you guys get all that stuff in on time? Like how did you because there was a huge amount of stuff in that game.
Well, we thought this ahead, so we made all the weapons and abilities be reusable. So in reality there's only one weapon that you can modify its fire rate, what projectile it shoots, and how fast it does. It was more about the projectiles, and even those there's only like 3 projectiles that actually do something different than the other ones. Uh, and for the abilities, it was knowing how to do a certain stuff, like make the player slower, then replicate that, but add a twist to it. For example, the black hole and the I think it was the slowdown ability. They both slow the player down, but in different ways. Okay, we had this the slowdown thing or function. So we can reuse this in here. And what's the bunch of that? If we have this, so if we call this function over here, we can save like half an hour of development.
Nice. So yeah, so you had your kind of framework that you were able to kind of tweak and modify, right? That's so you had a good foundation that you just kind of built up on. What about? So I know you guys have a couple bosses in your game. So when we talk a little about the bosses that you guys put in, what was their like design philosophy and how did you build them?
That was more developed by my teammate Edgar's, but I can tell you a bit about it. So the first one is this born boss, and his idea was, okay, we have to introduce the player to or make sure they already know the controls, so we can't make this enemy too hard. So we're just gonna add him mines and a dash to the player. So the player has to know I have to avoid these things, so I have to like turn around and do this wave thing, and I also have to learn to avoid the enemies or predict their movement, so I can work the physics in my favor. And the second one was like, okay, are you sure you know this? And then we test them again, but now we add projectiles, so they know how to avoid projectiles in this physical kind of floating movement thing. And the last one was, now we're going to make the final test. So it was adding everything that we teach the player about the game until that point, but now we're going to have 3 enemies at the same time. The second phase is going to have shields, and the last one is going to be a laser that almost insta-kills you. Damage. It's a test that we want to make sure you learn how to control your ship with these floating controls.
That's like each boss kind of progressively tests more and more of the player,
Yes.
right? As you encounter it. So you wanted to focus on certain aspects of the player's mechanics, and you wanted to make sure the player knew how to do that before you move on to the next boss. Awesome. And I mean, just in general, like now that you're guys, how does it feel to be like done? How did it feel to go through that whole process
It
of?
feels great, but kind of weird too, like, because as a game developer, you always, oh, I could have done this better, or this is not finished. But you have to learn to, okay, if I keep doing this, I'm never gonna be done, and then the project might be worse. You have to learn to let go and just accept your project as it is.
Yeah, like as with any creative discipline, right? There's that want to constantly like tweak and change, right? But then you always run the risk of like, when do you stop tweaking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? What's that saying? Like games are never finished; they're just abandoned.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you know exactly what that means now. And what like moving forward, like what are some studios you want to work at? Like what kind of projects you want to be working on?
Well, I always love ID software. I also loved. Oh, I forget the name. The guys that made the Battlefield series. Dice.
There you go,
I
yeah.
just love Dice and
I was blanking too. I'm like, I know.
yeah. They made some really much games, and also Splash Damage, the guy from Titanfall 2. If they make a new Titanfall game, I would love to work on that.
I heard that there was like rumors around something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, it's really nice talking to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Right on.
That's great.